begun. Counting votes in the world's largest democracy, the last lap of the mammoth task that began 2 months ago.
More than 8,000 candidates will know their fate by the end of the day, and we will know who's forming the next government.
We'll keep you posted on each round of counting as they come in and decode each trend and the implications those have on future policy. Welcome to Bloomberg Quint. First, the trade setup in Neeraj as always.
Well, guys, I decided to keep it simple. It's very difficult to predict what will happen on the day today. There will be one certainty, and that is volatility. But it pays to look at what the past is telling us, what history is telling us, and therefore very quickly look at what's happened in election years all through from 1999. That's the first point that I want to make to anybody who's looking to trade today and thinking about what the markets will do over the course of the next 6 odd months. 1 month ahead of polls, markets by and large have risen. That's been the case this time around as well, largely. On the result day, without exception, the returns have been in or around 1%. You can argue that 0.7 is slightly less than a percent, but if you look at it, it's between 0.7% and 1.2%. So largely on the result day, the returns for the markets have been 1% in all of the last preceding 4 instances. And for the election here again, without exception, there have been positive returns. Yes, 2004 was a small deviation, wherein, not a deviation really, but just a 9% uptick, but there were positive returns as well. So if you look at history, whether you're a mid-cap or a large-cap investor, you can take heart from that. In fact, election year returns, if we split it up from 2004, 2009 and 2014, if we split it up into pre-verdict and post-verdict, you'll again see that because the year by and large had positive returns and 2004 was marred by a pre-verdict 10% downtake, largely there have been positive returns, and post-verdict we've definitely had positive returns. So that's the other piece that you got to keep in mind. And lastly, while we may see volatility on the election day or the election month, and the month of May by and large has been very, very volatile, the Indian markets, and I'm using the Nifty out here, tends to revert to mean and tends to follow the MSCI Asia Pacific Index. It tends to follow the trend. So this is 2014, which was an exception, wherein the markets rose, then kind of followed the trend, but beat the MSCI EM and MSCI Asia Pacific indices very handsomely. But look at 2009, look at 2004, after very strong gyrations that happened in the election month, the markets, the Nifty, which is the white line, went back to following what the emerging market and the Asia Pacific markets were saying. So that is essentially the trend of the markets over the year. This is something that you got to keep in mind as you trade the very important day today. But Kaushik, the playbook.
Yep. This is what you should equip yourself with while monitoring today's numbers as they come in. Let's take it for the BJP first. The BJP's game will be determined by these 5 factors. First up, the ground zero, the epicenter of any Lok Sabha election in India, Uttar Pradesh. On-ground reports have been divergent. Exit polls, reportage, offering different pictures. Some saying the BJP is ahead, others saying the Mahagathbandhan between the Samajwadi Party's BSP is on a stronger wicket. A clearer picture on Uttar Pradesh will emerge only after a certain number of rounds has been counted. So hold on before you draw a judgment on UP. Second, to what extent has the BJP been able to, through the course of today, retain its complete sweep of the north and the west that it did in 2014. Remember, it's in a straight fight in the Congress with the Congress in a number of states, in Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Himachal and Uttarakhand. Most exit polls released on Sunday show that the BJP is well ahead in each of these, even if it's lost power at the state level in some of these. Third, the story of this election in 2019 might come down to what happens in West Bengal and Odisha, where the BJP seems to be poised to dramatically shake up the complete lockdown on those 2 states that Mamata Banerjee and Naveen Patnaik had over the last couple of elections. In the south, the exit polls are showing a strong BJP performance in Karnataka. Now, that's already led to some more bickering in the uncomfortable one-year alliance between the Congress and the JDS. Meanwhile, in Tamil Nadu, the DMK, which is in alliance with the Congress, is expected to do well. But remember that any seats that the AIDMK wins and its smaller allies win will be bonus to the NDA tally, because in 2014, that number of 336 that you had only 2 seats from Tamil Nadu. So any AIDMK additions would be a bonus. Lastly, over the last 5 years, the BJP has been able to erect a Northeast Democratic Alliance under the leadership of ex-Congressman Himanta Biswa Sarma. That is now in power across all 8 states of the Northeast. That gives the BJP yet another region to scale up its presence. Does the power at the state level allow a complete NDA sweep in the Northeast? That's for the BJP. For the Congress, polls are predicting that the Congress is on a strong wicket in Punjab and Kerala, but that's only 2 states. To be anywhere close to playing even a supporting role to a political formation wants to stake claim to power, it needs to build on the assembly election successes it had 6 months ago in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. It also needs to ensure minimal vote leakage in that alliance I just mentioned in Karnataka. Then it needs to give the BJP a close fight as it did in the assembly election in Gujarat and not let another washout happen. Move to Maharashtra, where it's gotten back with the NCP. It needs to notch up some wins there. And then lastly, hope for not just leads, but a blowout win with the alliance with the DMK in Tamil Nadu. In the event of a hung parliament, the balance of power could come down to a handful of unaligned regional parties. And which way they go. The BJP may attempt to woo the Telangana Rashtra Samiti, the YSR Congress, or perhaps even the Biju Janata Dal. There are certain regional parties that are stridently against the BJP. The SP-BSP combined, the Trinamool Congress, and lately the TDP as well. Those might hope or even push for a 1996-like arrangement where regional parties come together and get some sort of support from the Congress in order to just keep the BJP out. Remember, the counting process today through this election result will be slower because of the VVPAT slips that will be counted periodically. If this is anything like the recent results of Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Karnataka, where the results were close, we're in for a very long counting day, Neeraj.
All right, so we will be keeping our eye out for all of those important numbers that will keep trickling in throughout the day. But joining us now on the show is Sanjay Pugalia, Editorial Director at Quintilian Media, and Taimur Beg, Managing Director and Chief Economist at DBS Group Research. Taimur, I want to start off with you. Obviously, while we are going to keep an eye out for who finally makes the government, but the more important point that market watchers are going to be looking out for is whether or not the reform momentum will continue, whether or not there will be policy continuity.
Absolutely. I think what we have seen in Indonesia over the past week is a very interesting and useful test case for what we can expect out of India. Similar situation, 5-year government. In the case of Indonesia, the second term for President Jokowi is already officially announced. In the case of India, I seem to think that most of your exit polls seem to suggest that there will also be the second term for Prime Minister Modi. So what has the market done in the lead up and subsequent results of Indonesia? Not a whole lot. Some relief rally, but after that, the global cues have been dominant. I think in the case of India, it will be similar. We have seen some relief rally already, but global cues with respect to the trade wars, weak external demand, what's happening with the US dollar, what's happening with Iran, I think those things will come back to dominate the macro picture very, very soon after the election results are taken into account by the markets.
So with regards to various other factors in the last 5 years of the Modi government, we've seen GDP growth slowing off a bit. So you had the lowest GDP number in the last 5 quarters in the December quarter of 2018, which came at, I think, about 6.6%. Is there any prediction in terms of, where exactly the growth trajectory could lie going ahead? And, while we're talking about policy continuity, a lot of focus now on what happens post-government being appointed with the RBI and what policy stance they take.
Right. I think that as far as the growth momentum is concerned, there is nothing to take away on the cheerful side. We have our nowcasting model of India, with which we have looked at the January, March, April, June. Even we have sort of nowcast to forecast the Q3 calendar year of this year, which is the July, August, September quarter. In all of this data analysis, what we find is growth momentum will continue to slow toward low 6s unless there is a major turnaround in sentiments or consumption. And beyond the GDP statistics, if you look at the FMCG sector, or if you look at consumer durable sector, the data that we have seen for the first quarter earnings reports, first quarter calendar 2019 earnings reports, is not encouraging at all. We're seeing a sequential slowdown on domestic consumption momentum. Nothing that we have heard in the month of April or May make us think that that is changing, so the deceleration continues in the context of tight liquidity and banking system distress. So that weak consumption, weak financial sector combination is something that will need to be tackled in the near term with some degree of urgency, in my view.
Sanjay, good morning. Let me bring you in this discussion. We'll talk about the politics in a bit, Sanjay, but you have a very acute sense of what the economic policies could look like depending on which side comes to power. Now, let's work with the assumption that the exit polls have given the right indication of what will happen, plus or minus a few seats. Would you reckon that policy continuity from the Bharatiya Janata Party, if they are into power indeed, would lead to some bit of a pickup, or do they need to do something drastic here?
No, assuming Mr. Modi is back in power, that will mean that he knows about the criticism and the slowdown of economy. So that would mean that he will make major announcements to reassure the investors, especially India's private sector, that he is taking major steps to pep up the economy. But at the same time, Mr. Modi will be looking at next round of elections, that is Maharashtra, Jharkhand and Haryana. That means the focus on farm distress has to be there. That's a political need of BJP, because BJP has come under heavy criticism for not only slowing down the growth, but keep putting farm sector in a big mess. So I am expecting that his first priority would be to do something big, real big, not incremental for the farm sector. But in terms of announcement and intention, he will be saying the right things that markets and investors want to hear.
I'm certainly will do that. And we'll brush this point as well. But Taimur, that's the question really. How much leeway does whichever government come to power next have because of, if I can use corporate terms, the stretched balance sheet and the fact that the world is not looking as strong a place on the growth front as it was in 2018 and a better part of 2017 as well?
Very, very little leeway. Let's start with the domestic leeway issue, and then we can talk about the external leeway. In domestic side, last year the government borrowed close to 9% of GDP. So the consolidated balance, if you take the PAC's balance sheet and the state's balance sheet and the central government balance sheet, it hasn't been this bad in a very, very long time. If indeed there's going to be more sops toward the farmers and not much by way of buoyancy on the GST side, how are we going to square this circle? So I think on the fiscal arithmetic, big challenges remain. RBI has been exceptionally accommodating in terms of OMOs and FX swaps to provide the system with significant liquidity and monetizing significant of government issuances. There is a limit of what they can do as well. As we all know, the SLR ratios for the banks have come down substantially, so there isn't that much capability for banks to buy significant additional amount of government debt. So I think on the domestic leeway side, there is very, very little, especially when you consider what's happening with the banking system. So there's a private sector balance sheet issue and the central government balance sheet issue. On the external side, I'm afraid things are getting noisier. We have issues related to oil, where the US rhetoric gets more bellicose by the day. The risk of an accident there, which leads to a big spike in global oil prices, in my view, is substantial. We have issues related to China, which directly doesn't hurt India, but indirectly it has a chilling impact on global investment demand and global consumption demand. And we have seen across the board in Asia and elsewhere that export cycle, which was showing signs of recovery in the first 3 months of this year, has again begun to fall on its face. And if this continues, then we have an additional concern that a global demand slowdown would hurt Indian exports, which are actually not looking that great to begin with, but it'll hurt it even further. And that, of course, brings in the current account deficit concern.
Taimur, come budget in July, how much revision, if any, do you expect in the budget numbers, the fiscal numbers to be published? Come the fact that you've had a revenue shortfall, you've had certain other off-budget items that perhaps need to be recognized very soon. Do you see a significant revision? On the contrary, if expenditure has been cut back, if expenditure has been cut back to meet some of the revenue shortfall, does that mean that the economy could then get hurt more than what we factored? Because with consumption also slowing down, government expenditure slowing down would take one more leg away.
Right. I think in the trade-off between further consolidation and not, I think the answer right now, right after the election, would be not. I don't think the government is keen on giving India a very bitter dose of medicine right after the feel-good factor of the elections. So I cannot conceive of a budget that is very harsh. It probably will actually recognize a little bit slippage, maybe by 0.1% of GDP. But the official numbers, which are basically around central government deficit and have been sort of consistently in the low 3% range, 3.2, 3.3, that's pleasing. Whether or not that 3% target is reached this year or next year, I don't think the market cares that much. In fact, in my view, the fixed income market's narrative has shifted away from officially published central government numbers. I think the narrative is increasingly shifting to the consolidated balance sheet, which I said earlier is close to 9% of GDP.
Taimur, just one final question with regards to the equity market performances. Now, if you go by what history has done, post the announcement of the election verdict, we've actually seen the Indian equity markets doing relatively well for itself for the entire election year. But this time around, there are various other factors at play here and what's been happening globally as well. We've seen internally for ourselves too, we've seen the spending coming off. We've seen a little bit of a pushback in terms of purchases for consumption, which has had a negative impact here. So dynamics are different. Do you expect equity markets to play any different or probably align itself to what the last few years have been?
I think that the both external and domestic headwinds are myriad, and hence it's going to be difficult for a major rally for the asset markets to take place. And by that I mean whether it is real estate or equities or bond, all of the above. And the equity in particular, when we look at again the January-March numbers, the volume growth in various consumer sectors show substantial weakness compared to even like 4 quarters ago when growth numbers were much, much more robust. So this is a source of worry, which I think once the market sort of goes past the election euphoria, will have to be forced to reckon with. And therein lies the challenge that will there be some policy stimulus, whether it's on the tax side or expenditure side, that can revive animal spirits. But I hate to be a broken record, but given the problems with the public sector and private sector balance sheet, given the issues with the financial sector, it's very hard for me to see what kind of magic act the government can pull off where it can balance all those conflicting demands.
Taimur, and we'll speak to you soon when we have a better picture of what this result holds, what the economic data immediately in 5 days from now, and then the monetary policy in about 10 days. Thanks, Taimur. Sanjay, back to you. If the NDA comes back to power on the campaign that it's run, what does that say about the policy impetus and the political will for the need to address some of the issues that the old BJP core voter would want addressed? The state of the informal economy, the fact that the trading community within the agricultural circles, all of those are under pressure right now. If that voter is still voting for the BJP on issues outside these, what's the urgency that politicians feel in saying, I need to address this right now?
Look, their core voters, small shopkeepers, traders, even if they are unhappy, they have voted for Mr. Modi for some other issue, which is about the quote-unquote nationalism of BJP, that it is a Desh ka chunav. So they have taken an emotional decision. And BJP will not be feeling real pressure that they have to immediately address the economic concerns, because somehow after this verdict, which may be quite emphatic, BJP will be much more confident that nobody is kind of punishing or even asking BJP that what have they done on the tangible, real, hardcore issues. But in terms of addressing those concerns, look, BJP was never short of making right statements, making statements which will be seen as doing something, but things did not pan out that way on the ground. Now, of course, the second term will put lots of pressure on Mr. Modi, and he will try to execute things faster. And we all hope that he doesn't go back to drastic measures like demonetization, but he always believes in creating shock and awe kind of atmosphere. So even as far as their core voters are concerned and their economic issues are concerned, you will see lots of dramatic announcements.
Okay,
all right. We're seeing some of the very, very early trends come in. Sanjay, I'll just do a quick run through of the numbers and come back to you. Remember, these are probably the first few rounds, the first round and the first few votes being counted. So you will see numbers move through the day. Right now, you're seeing the ND as a consolidated entity at about, in the first few votes being counted, leading in about 80 seats. I'm trying to get a sense of where those are coming from. There are about 18 leads that the BJP has in Karnataka, 17 in Gujarat, 10 in Rajasthan, 4 from Madhya Pradesh, 3 from West Bengal, and 10 from Uttar Pradesh. On the UPA side, right now you're seeing numbers come in for the UPA from Uttar Pradesh. You're seeing 5 leads come in from Karnataka, 2 from Gujarat, and 1 from Rajasthan. Sanjay, give us a sense of the fact that this is a long day. We've been used to giving a clear trend within the first few hours. So for a sense of an advisory as such, to those monitoring these trends and choosing what to do with their money, what would you advise them with caution on this?
Look, most likely these are the postal ballots which are being counted, but in some time the machines will start to be counted. So currently we should wait for some time, but directionally I would say that NDA is kind of back to power, but let us hold for some time. Currently BJP is gaining almost getting all those seats that it had in the previous Lok Sabha. UPA alliance making minor gains, but at the cost of non-aligned, the other kind of parties, regional parties and all of that. So currently it's, the trend is as predicted in exit poll that BJP and NDA is marching towards a comfortable win, I would say. Plus, I mean, will it be 272 plus or 272 minus? I think in few minutes it will be very clear. I think before market opens, actually, the trend will be much more stable.
Sanjay, no, let me get this from you. You are saying that before market opens, you believe that there might be initial trends which could be indicative of what will happen in the election?
Yeah, I think in next half an hour or 45 minutes or so, the initial trend will be giving you an indication. Can things change? Yes, they can change.
Okay.
So what will be the timeline when the trend should be taken as a firmed up trend? I would say not before 10 o'clock or 10:30. Earliest, that is earliest.
Okay,
and it
we'll
could be 11 o'clock.
Well.
But,
I'm sure.
But I think in next 30 minutes or 45 minutes, we will have a clarity.
Sanjay, one question. As per your experience this time around, what are the states that people should keep an key eye out for? Because I know from past experience that these leads tend to change quite dramatically. What are the states that you're keenly watching out for which could have a big impact on what the eventual tally could be? I mean, the difference between now and the eventual tally could be?
Sorry, come back. The voice broke. Come back.
I was asking you, Sanjay, between now and the eventual tally, what are the states that could contribute to a dramatic change this time around? What are the states that you're watching out for very closely?
Look, going by exit poll and the current political mood, it seems that the real swing states are UP, Bengal and Odisha. These 3 states we have to watch very carefully. In southern states, look at Karnataka, and in western states, look at Maharashtra. It seems the possibility of major loss in North Indian states, barring UP, seems to be diminishing a bit, where Congress is in direct fight with BJP. It seems BJP is holding on to their old numbers, but it is too early to really talk about numbers. But broadly, I would say that UP, West Bengal, Odisha will decide the shape of the next government.
Sanjay, from last elections to this elections, where the focus and the main core was in the north for the BJP, do you think this time around that has become more pan-India?
Sorry, come again. I didn't get your question full.
BJP last elections, the main core was in the north. This time around, with what they've been doing in the East, even for that matter in the South, do you think it's getting more pan-India?
Look, in Karnataka, they have always been present. Beyond Karnataka, I don't see BJP gaining ground in South India. But East India is the real new greenfield project for BJP, and in terms of vote share, BJP will definitely make serious inroads. The conversion into seats is still anybody's guess, because in Bengal, people have predicted all kind of numbers in all exit polls. So Bengal, yes, if they are converting vote share into a good number of seats, I would put it as double-digit seats, that will be seen as a major expansion of BJP in Bengal. North, they have been absolutely strong all the time, so I do not see further gains for BJP. South, I do not really see BJP will be gaining any significant foothold.
Okay, Sanjay, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for taking the time out and being with us. We'll, of course, look forward to having you through during the day as well on Bloomberg Quint. Well, very crucial to get Sanjay Pugalia's analysis. And remember, as we said, that maybe the early leads, and right now this must be the postal ballots which are giving out. Kaushik, you might have a better handle here, but these would be too early to figure out what the eventual numbers could be. That's maybe right. By 10:30, and it's a different election this time around, we might still get some clear indications.
No, so here's the bit, right? If a very large gap stays consistent, then the risk of the result being misunderstood is narrower, because even if there is some volatility, you're seeing some gap. Where you saw some sort of uncertainty in the market on trading days was when the Gujarat election result a year and a half ago, what happened in Madhya Pradesh 6 months ago, what happened in Karnataka a year ago, was that it was narrower, and so who would form power kept either flipping or got too close to call. Even if numbers move around, if there is a wide gap, you know which way it's trending towards.
Okay, we should try and, Devina, we should also try and pull up the SGX Nifty intraday chart on the Bloomberg terminal maybe.
It's a 0.25%, I think 0.5%.
It is 0.5% now. I think the markets and the SGX Nifty will tell you, right, that the markets will now start moving to almost every indication that comes out. For now, as our website suggests, it's about 110 to the NDA, to 43 UPA, which is not a bad show either for the time being. SP, BSP have opened the account with 2 seats as well. But, well, this should be very, very interesting to figure out which way it goes. We'll be back in just moments from now after a very quick break to try and make more sense. Get in market experts to try and give you an indication of what you should be doing with your money once the market starts trading at 9 a.m. Stay tuned to Bloomberg Quint Live.